with, who works on the student handbook?
Who works on the student handbook? Well, what's interesting about student handbook is it's not a handbook. Like this is the last handbook.
Oh, wow.
Or that's the director. No, I think the handbook hasn't been printed for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, but the handbook is created for the campus community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that, I mean, my office, or I'm responsible for the student conduct code part of the handbook, but there's a lot of other information in the student handbook that the Vice President for Student Affairs and Campus Life office has part of it, and Residential Life has another part, and Public Safety has another part. So it's really a lot of different offices, mostly in the Student Affairs division around campus, that are responsible for
the process of putting all those elements together then.
I don't do that.
Okay.
So, but Doreen Haddock-Atkins, she's a really long title. It's like Executive Assistant to the Senior Vice President of Student Affairs and Campus Life, who's Rory Rothman. I know that whenever we have any changes in any of the things that we're responsible for with the conduct code, we send those to her, and then so there may be certain things that have to be approved. Like whenever there's a change in the student conduct code, it has to be approved by the Board of Trustees. So it's something that we would put proposals together, get them into Doreen, and Rory looks them over, and then it goes to the board, and like the board meeting, usually the one in May, when the board is here, they'll review our changes, go over them, and then either approve or make changes. So that's how we put things together. But I imagine it's, there are certain probably minor details or changes that can just go right in the conduct code, or right in the student handbook. But for the student conduct code, it's a little more complicated because a conduct code has to be approved.
Have there been any recent changes that students might not know about?
Well, there are actually changes that are being proposed, for next year's conduct code that we have been working on for the past year. So there's a couple new policies that we've added. What we did is we researched model student conduct codes from around the country, because we were thinking, what are some things that, how do we compare to other colleges? And I think for the most part we are pretty much in line with other colleges, but there are a few things that we felt that were really good policy that we were missing, and we didn't have in the code. So one of those, technology. With technology, we have a new policy on cyber bullying and bullying. I think that's something that we've seen a lot more in high schools, like high schools having policies against bullying. And I think a lot of over the last 5 years, I've noticed with technology where people feel like, well, I'm getting harassed by Facebook messages, or things that happen online. So I think that having a policy on bullying and cyberbullying is really a good thing. We didn't have a policy on stalking. We have a policy on harassment, but we wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit more and have a policy on stalking. And then there's just some other changes that we put in about some of our policies on summary suspension and a few other things like that. So not a lot, but a few things that we felt updated our code and made it more in line with.
Is there any way for students to propose a change?
Students can propose a change, sure. I think the best way to do that would probably be through student government. Obviously, if there's things that students review or see as something that they feel isn't in our code or should be changed, you'd start there.
And so how do you think the code of conduct has been received by the student body, or do you think that they might not maybe know as much about it as they should? Because when we surveyed some students, not many of them have looked at it very in depth anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked by that. I'm shocked that students would not want to. No, I don't think that a lot of students, I know when I was a student, I didn't look at the student conduct code. So I would imagine most students don't look at the code. They may know some of the policies, and during student orientation, we try to share with students and families, what our policies are, and we really focus on, okay, this is what the alcohol policy is, or this is what the drug policy, or this is quiet hours. Yeah, I mean, alcohol, drugs, and quiet hours are the top 3 policy violations, and so those are ones we really stress during orientation, and then floor meetings with the RAs. So we try to expose students to what the policies are and where you can find them. But I think a lot of times I wouldn't expect students to really read into that, but I think if you're ever charged under the Student Conduct Code, then you might want to have more interest, like, oh wow, what is this all about? So I think that's probably how students look.
Are there any rules that have ever been like opposed by students, or like that they've protested against those rules? Maybe not like actively protest, but
Right.
complained about.
When we changed our alcohol policy about, I think it was 2001, it used to be that RAs could not confront a student and document them for an alcohol violation. It was only under New York state law, it was only police officers, so our public safety staff was the only people that could really document a student for an alcohol violation. And so we changed that and gave the RAs the ability to, if someone was underage and drinking, they could document the situation. So that was a change on how the policy was documented. And so I think it took some time for students to get used to that, so they maybe weren't as pleased about that. And then a couple of years ago, we changed our protocol for alcohol and drug violations. You probably, I don't know if you got one of these when you came to school, or these got handed out. See, there you go. Well, that's good. So, we changed our protocol on alcohol and marijuana violations and what the sanctions would be. And so I think that was a change for our returning students because they were used to how we did things in the past. But I think it was good to make it clear. So, I think that's the best part about a student conduct code is if it's understandable and it's clear. Okay, this is what the policy means, or this is what could happen if I'm involved in this kind of a violation, or these are the rights I have. I have a right to a hearing. I have a right to someone hear my side of the story, things like that. So we try to explain and be as clear as we can.
You would say that you think it's pretty easy to read.
I think so. Yeah, I do.
Good. And how would you rate it in terms of like strictness or fairness for students?
As I said, I think when we looked at all the different conduct codes across the country and the model conduct codes, I think we're fairly consistent. There are many campuses across the country that are dry campuses, or I've heard of campuses that, like on a first or second alcohol or drug violation, you're removed from housing or suspended from the college, and we are not like that. I think we are pretty reasonable. Usually we try to give people 3 chances with an alcohol or drug violation before they would even be considered to be removed off campus. So I think we try to take things in steps. Our goal is not, I guess I don't look at myself as a disciplinarian, I look at myself as an educator. And so if I can help students be successful and learn so they don't make the same decision or mistake another time, and they can have a positive experience and be a good community member, then that's good. Then I'm doing my job, and so that's really I think what we try to accomplish with our code.
In your opinion, do any of the rules in the code of conduct almost maybe infringe upon rights that we might have that, like, if we weren't on campus?
Interesting. I think that there is probably more, students would probably think they have more freedom off campus. There's not as much of you don't have, RAs walking through your building or public safety officers walking around to kind of monitor behavior as much as downtown. If you're in an apartment somewhere, but if you're really noisy or there's underage drinking or littering or stuff like that, you get arrested by the Ithaca police and go through the criminal justice system, which is a lot different than our conduct system on college. So I don't think our rules are really infringe on people's rights, but I think the way they're monitored is probably the difference.
How well do you think students know their rights, just in general, like the campus policies, the U.S. policies?
I would say, I think students, if you're going to be involved in the process, I think if you get charged, I think students are really good about like reading up or asking good questions when they come in to meet with me. But I think probably overall, students probably aren't as aware of their rights or aware of the policies if it doesn't affect them. I would say. I think that's for most things in life. If it doesn't really affect you, you may not know as much about it. One other thing, we handle the academic cases on campus, and I think sometimes students will meet with a faculty member and say, oh, you've been charged with plagiarism, so you need to sign this form to say that you agree to this, and I'm going to give you an F for the paper, and you're going to get put in academic probation, and the student will be like, oh, okay, I'll sign that. And I've had students say that, and then they don't realize that they have a right to come to this office and meet with me, and if they disagree with the decision of the faculty member, they're allowed to go to an academic conduct review board and things like that. So I think it really is a good thing to know as much as you can about the student conduct code and your rights and responsibilities as a student, because it could help you out in a situation that you make a decision and you realize, wow, I had a right to do this or whatever. So I think that's important.